Hey everyone, welcome back to Now Next Later. I am both happy to announce that Brock Cassidy, CRO of NewsZip, is here with us, and also sad to let you know that Jer is stuck on a flight that's had multiple delays today. So we were hoping that we would have all three of us, but it is the two of us. And I cannot believe it's November, but welcome, Brock, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sasha. Yeah, Jeremy was giving me the crash course on what he wanted to talk about today, and then had all the flight delays hit him. But yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, closed out October on Friday. I like having the end of month on a weekday. That helped.
Yes.
But crazy, it's November.
Yeah, it is. The year feels like it has flown by. And on that note, we're going to talk today about 3 mortgage trends to watch. I was just on a call where we were talking about how we used to say, survive 2024 to get to 2025. We got to 2025. It's been interesting at best. And I think we're all hoping for a stronger 26. And I think there are some indicators that show that there are signs of that. And there's also some trends that I am curious about your take on. And audience, feel free to put the questions in Zoom as well around, are these really the mortgage trends to watch? And, we'll make our assumptions and place our bets now, and then we'll see next year, how close were we? So with that, let's dive right in. So first mortgage trend is that everyone's hoping the purchase market's going to pick up, but the question is it going to be regionally focused? What are your thoughts, Brock?
Yeah, I like this one. I mean, I'm guilty of using a lot of national data with my company. We partner with loan officers on purchase all day, every day. That's what we do. And the national data, tells a kind of lukewarm but decent story of, prices are mostly staying the same, and there's flights to certain regions, but pricing looks pretty flat. Inventory is coming up a little bit, but nothing too crazy. But in reality, I think where we want to go with this conversation is how different it is by market. At least that's what I was thinking. We had the crazy COVID boom of whether it was vacation rentals or moving out of cities. Then we had a couple of years where I lived in New York City in the post COVID environment, and that was crazy how many people were moving back there for a couple of years. So I feel like we're now it's 2025. It's been a few years, almost 2026, and I think that the regionalization is maybe stabilized a little bit from like pandemic craziness, but still happening where the divergence of where lenders are building their footprint, where realtors are building their footprint, really matters. And I know there's a lot of trends around national companies trying to win market share in all over the country, but the pricing divergence is so high that certain mortgage products don't even work in certain regions, and insurance, you can't get insurance in parts of the country right now. So I do think that the now of it, I guess, using the show's format is that it really is pricing divergence is really telling a different story than the national narrative. Some markets are really pretty healthy and growing, and a lot of markets are down a lot. I like to look at the top 10, bottom 10 markets that I think Realtor.com does that pretty well. But yeah, how are you thinking about it?
I think same, and I'm curious because there's a lot of, to your point, data that's pointing to what are those top 10, what are the bottom 10. So some of those hotter markets that I've heard about. I just left Arizona for Pennsylvania, so apparently bad on me for leaving a hot market. But Arizona, Florida, right, the Carolinas, and then other areas of the country could see more stagnation. And so to your point, I think the question then becomes, what are lenders like? What can you do if you haven't already expanded your footprint into the areas where we either think or it's starting to show signs of it being, a hotter market? What do you start to think about doing as far as getting local with your strategy and becoming more regionalized?
Yeah. Well, I think to your point a second ago, the survive to 25 narrative is kind of officially been put to bed, where now this is the market. The market's been within kind of a certain range for 3 years now, really, at least 2 years now. And most every prediction I've seen is predicting more of the same. So, I think it's like you gotta pull out your tool belt a little bit and figure out like down payment assistant products, realtor partnerships. Obviously, I'm biased. I help a lot of lenders launch new markets with realtor partnerships. But it's, I think like waiting for refis not gonna keep lenders in business. There's been a good month or two where refi's grown, but nothing like the boom that everyone has been hoping for. And so you have to develop a purchase strategy, and you have to develop a regional purchase strategy. And to do that, you have to partner with people on the ground, whether that's builders becoming their preferred partner or some sort of affiliated partner, whether that's realtors, and learning about there's some really amazing down payment assistance products that are, some are impacted by the government shutdown, obviously at the moment, but at every level, there's a lot of really cool conversations about affordability going on. Anytime I go speak in any given region or join any given region's mortgage conference, I learn a lot. So I would encourage lenders to do the same.
Yeah, no, affordability is a great point, and costs are continuing to rise across all the areas, taxes, insurance, in my own backyard of credit, et cetera. So definitely a great place to pay attention to. And I like that idea. Like, you've got to figure out, if you're not already in regional areas, how can you strategize to partner with others who are, to help really protect your book of business there. I think earlier this year at the Econ Summit that Housing Wire did, and sorry, Robbie, don't be mad at me for bringing up another media company, but the joke in the back row was like, oh, when rates get down to 6%, everything's going to be better, right? And rates have come down to pretty much 6%, and everything's not better. And now we're hearing like maybe we'll reach the high fives, right? And the Freddie 30-year fix could be there by the end of the year. And that sounds bullish market-wise, but if the rates ease, do jobs and income also start to soften? And, does that rate decrease really show positivity for our market, or do we see other impacts where it just kind of balances itself out? So thoughts there?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think we've all kind of had all the predictions thrown out the window there. I've been in many such conversations at, I don't think I was at that conference, but many other ones in the last couple of years. Yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of back to what I was just saying in my mind of like, loan officers are going to have to, and lenders are going to have to go looking for differentiators, and not just wait for whether they're thinking refi or purchase. It's not just waiting for rates to drop, and the cheaper money isn't going to help if you don't have a bankable product, right? So thinking about whether that's, depending on the market, right? Whether that's figuring out insurance issues, whether that's figuring out condos, whether that's partnering with builders, whether that's Jeremy, loves to talk about on this show and anywhere else he is, about all the fractionalization of real estate. Maybe homeownership's just going to look different, where you rent where you live, but you find other ways to invest in real estate. Loan officers should figure out if there's a play for them in markets where that's the only option. Just kind of layering your strategy around different products or around, whether it's raw land or anything else, depending on what region you're focused on.
100%. Have you seen lenders start to look at how to manage more creatively with the consumer confidence piece of this?
I mean, I think in terms of, I haven't seen a ton of change. I mean, I think lenders are using more affordability language than I used to see. So that's a great step. Yep. I mean, I'm always a big fan of like any of the educational platforms, like for current homeowners. Lots of our partners use HomeBot, or Home Scout, or lots of other products in that space. For first-time home buyers, the educational platforms, like FinLocker, that Brian View's been building with his team for a really long time. Like, I've seen lenders start to adopt those things. I don't know if it's been a fundamental enough shift. I think they maybe have a tool now, which is something, but still have to like work it into your everyday operation.
Yeah, no, 100%. And those consumer education activities feel like they've always been there, but some of these newer ones are new. And so I think when you're balancing so much change and so much turbulence in the market, lenders are struggling to figure out where and how do I embed that, right? And you'll see larger ones that will create their own version of consumer education and advocacy, and then you've got, smaller ones that might need to look to some of these tools like you mentioned, HomeBot, Homescape, and then FinLocker. And given Brian's departure to Mismo, I think everyone's looking to see what's going to happen with FinLocker, right?
Yeah, I know they have a great team that's been behind them for a long time. That'll keep growing. But yeah, that was big news.
Yeah, I know. And I'm sure he'll keep his eyes on that as well. So third trend to watch is, and it kind of goes hand in hand, right? Loan officers, are they going to start to ask for new products, particularly in the purchase space, given, what they're going to be up against?
Yeah. I'd be curious for you to kick off that one. That's one that I've always been sort of an outsider on, like the mortgage product conversation. How do you see that one?
Yeah, I think you touched on a little bit with the idea of differentiating how and where you live and how you buy and invest in real estate. But also we've talked before about shared equity opportunities and programs that are out there. And so, the question becomes, again, this is something where we've seen, small adoption, but are we going to see additional adoption continue in that? And then I think you also mentioned the down payment assistance programs, are there additional products that can come, hand in hand with that? I do think affordability is going to continue to be an issue. And especially if with rates coming down, we do see some job or income softening, that's going to continue to be a rising area of concern that we need to look at. I also, will be curious to see, as there's probably an ask for new products, how does the capital market side, the house look at the risk associated? And it's hard to know, like, how far should a lender stretch themselves? You've got a pipeline you already have to manage, a lot of other things you have to manage. How do you think about adding additional programs in that will give more options to consumers, but also really be sustainable when it comes to affordability?
Yeah, and I'd love to continue to see more investment, and maybe this is like slightly outside the industry coming into the industry. We've seen like Plaid and like platforms like that have made the gathering of information a lot better, but we haven't seen a ton of change in underwriting that I know of. Some places we have, I'm sure, but that's one where I think about, like, we still don't really have particularly accurate cash flow underwriting that affects most products. The shared equity products we were just talking about are still, like, there's like, if you get a gift from a family member, people kind of know what to do, but what about any of the other 100 ways that you could get help? I know a lot of lenders still struggle with. One that we see a lot in our business, we work with a lot of first-time home buyers, is that there's really nice manufactured housing stock now in a lot of markets that looks and feels a lot like, lendable, stick-built homes, but still generally is not treated as such, with some exceptions. And so that feels like one to bet on if I was in, I don't know, 80% of markets in the country, probably some that doesn't work at all. But I do think having a manufactured or like land lease strategy or something like that is smart for lenders, as that continues to make progress and it continues to get slower and harder to do the traditional stick-built housing. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I do think, as we've talked about, lenders are going to see, again, this new, I'm calling it like a new way of business, right? It's like we always say, like, we have shifts and pivots and we've got up cycles and down cycles. It feels like new world in mortgage is just constant change. Like, that is just going to be what the world is, and that's what we have to consume. And so, making your strategy adaptable and the ability to pivot quickly is going to be a critical piece of the puzzle, I think, in order for lenders to prepare for any of these trends coming true, right? Assuming that they do. That being said, if you had to pick one based on the three that we talked about, that you're like, I'm placing my bet on that one for sure, where would you go? The rates, the regional purchase market, and then our loan officers going to ask for new products.
I mean, I definitely think loan officers are going to ask for new products. I think that's the one that's the clearest. To me,
when do they not ask for things, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then, so that's step one, right? They ask for new products, and then I guess capital markets needs to figure out how to make that risk acceptable from those new products versus the growth opportunity. And then, operations has to figure out how to make sense of the docs and the logic and everything. So
Yeah.
maybe that's where we, start to see the value of AI and cleaner data and all the operational assistance from technology that's available and probably underutilized by the industry right now, but for the most part. So I think that the technology stack today can help a lot more with the new products. And so I'd bet on that trend.
Yeah.
MLOs keep asking either way, but I think now it's more doable.
You're 100% going to ask. The other thing that's interesting too is just this constant conversation around AI versus human interaction when it comes to purchasing a home. It is, if not the largest, one of the biggest purchase decisions that somebody will make in their lifetime. And so, there's always going to be that need for humans to be involved and to be advising, so those loan officers may need, some uplift from the back end ops team to help turn times and, things go faster. And I feel like that's where the AI might hopefully come into play stronger. But lenders, on the loan officer side are still going to have to be, in my mind, very relationship focused, very leaned in. I think we're seeing more diversification with consumers than ever.
Yeah.
At MBA, the one of the speakers at the Empower event talked about how there's actually six or five, I'm terrible, generations in the workplace right now. So one is, now granted, probably not buying a home at 14 and a half years old on a worker's permit at not Walmart, at McDonald's. And then there was a woman in her 90s working at Walmart. But nevertheless, like you're seeing this, we're living longer, right? There are more generations out in the workforce together. There are more generations buying homes than ever, and they all want a different experience, right? And so continuing to flex those muscles and being able to meet them where they're at while scaling your operations feels like an area to be really focused on for next.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of slightly conflicting, but the general idea is that the average home buyer today is like buying their third or fourth home and maybe in their 50s, something like that. Average, and so that, if not later, I've heard much later averages than that too, where it's mostly people that are already retired that are most of the transactions today, who are 60s, 70s, beyond. So yeah, you definitely have to think about who you're dealing with, and you think about where to plug in any of these technology items, getting people to adopt platforms, whether they're going to be comfortable speaking with AI, whether they're going to be comfortable dealing, finding a home online or whatever. Those things have all developed really quickly, and most people do start their search online and are fine starting their conversation with technology, let's say. But I think as a loan officer, you have to sit really kind of strong in your position and say, like, I'm going to leverage the AI to have more valuable conversations, not have the AI have my conversations. Use it on the front end, use it on qualification, your lender overall, or if you're running a smaller shop, maybe you literally will be able to use the AI behind the scenes to help with your qualification logic and shopping logic and whatever. But yeah, I think you have to sit strong on like the building the trust, especially in purchase, and building like you said, it's the biggest transaction they're going to do. And you're trying to meet them where they are. AI can make that a lot worse if you're not careful, but I think it can make it better.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. It makes me kind of think of David and Goliath as I'm sitting here considering, the big, massive shops out there. And then the ones that can be more creative, more tricky, more nimble. I would have in some ways thought maybe you put your bets behind the massive guys, kind of taking over and seeing more consolidation. But I feel like if you are more nimble, that might be like the strategy to really win next year.
Yeah, I was having a conversation a week or two ago with a few people at one of the conferences, but Jeff Walton being one of them, the CEO of Ingenious Data, and he was actually kind of spun that back and was like, this data is very affordable, and we can structure it for them for whether it's a small lender or a large lender or anywhere in between. We can give them really particular data about their business in minutes, seconds. So it doesn't have to be that only the top 10 shops have all this data like it was. I worked at Rocket from 2015 to 2021 with Jeremy, and I know he talks about it a lot on here. And like we had all the data, but Rocket was one of the only ones. That was this crazy advantage. Now that might not really be true anymore, where anyone can build national real estate partnerships easier by using companies like mine. Anyone can access this mortgage data by using platforms like Ingenious and a million other things, depending on what your problems are to solve. So I'm hopeful that it actually, does make the David versus Goliath conversations a lot easier. But you do have to, not try to do everything yourself the same as you always did, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What got us here isn't what's going to get us to where we need to go, right?
Yeah, I think so.
You mentioned it earlier in the conversation. I wanted to circle back to it because I feel like I glossed over it. Do you see lenders already building stronger relationships with local real estate and builder networks to stay closer to that side of the market?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a really common conversation that we have, NewZip has, is a lender that maybe has really deep-seated real estate relationships in their top couple of markets, but they want to expand their footprint, and they don't have those relationships that they worked on for a decade in, one state over, or 5 states over, or even one city over. And so they use us for that. And then we manage all the national partnerships, so they can use our network where they don't have that partner of their own and kind of get that partner of their own experience. So that's where I often come into the conversation. But more broadly, I am seeing that I am seeing a lot more creativity, I think, or maybe even competition around builder relationships too. That was never something I knew a whole lot about up until the last couple of years. And I guess arguably still probably don't, compared to a lot of people, but I do see a lot more lenders building either affiliate, whether literally joint ventures with builders. Obviously you need to be a certain size to do that. But a lot of less constrictive structures where they're going out and just winning on having products that the builder needs their buyers to have, or having bandwidth that the builder needs to use to help them qualify these clients or whatever. So I think, across both, I have seen some shift there from my seat.
Yeah, that feels like when I'm starting to try and break down the 3 mortgage market trends that Jeremy was thinking of, and the one around regional, that feels like the place that if you don't already have the footprint that you're looking for the later, how to prepare for 2026, is just really lean into those relationships and partners more. And if you don't know, reach out to someone like yourself or others that might be able to make those connections. When you go ahead.
No, agreed.
I'm trying to put myself, in a C-suite of a mortgage shop and think, back to the product side, what kind of questions do you think lenders should be asking their loan officers right now when it comes to innovation with new products?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the obvious one is dig into who you're saying no to right now. Is it that they're truly credit unworthy, or is it a structure issue? In a lot of regions, it's a structure issue or an insurance issue or other bottlenecks. And ever since 2020, that's really been the case. But some of those bottlenecks have cleared and many have not. So that's probably where I'd start. But beyond that, I mean, I think everyone's gotten exposure to these, with companies like Opendoor or even Zillow that came out with iBuying products in the real estate space. I think every LO's gotten, whatever they think of them, has gotten exposure to these types of products now that a big tech company from either outside the industry or adjacent to the industry is bringing in, and that's either going to be really good or really bad for me. So I always think it's interesting to hear what people think will work in their market. An LO who does 50 loans in this market, his opinion is going to be better than mine, sitting in a startup office thinking of who might need what.
Yep, makes sense. And then on the rate side, as I'm thinking about later, I'm drawn back to when my parents first bought a home and rates were 10, 11%, right? Yeah. And so you're okay, here we are balking, at 6. And, once upon a time, buying a home was a lot more expensive in that regard. Yeah. Do you think that given all the, call it whiplash, maybe we've experienced and seen, that we might see some desensitization, for lack of a better way of saying it, to rates from consumers?
I do. I've been saying that for a while, and I'll still say it now, sitting here in November with rates, a little over 6. I do. I mean, how many years are people going to delay their life events or their home purchases? The reality is, people are still getting married, getting divorced, having kids, having deaths in their family, having births in their family, whatever. So they're like, I like to come back to the life events of it all. And the loan officer and the realtor always have an interesting seat in all those life events and changes. But it's just been such a tough time for first-time home buyers. Like we were saying, a lot of those transactions are the third home or a buy and sell for someone that already has bought and sold 5 times before and doesn't need that much help. So I still think there's like incredible pent-up demand for first-time home buyers. In whatever form or function we as an industry can help them get there, fractionalization or otherwise.
Yeah, no, I love that. I know we're coming up on time. I want to recap kind of what I heard as far as thinking strategically from a lender standpoint, and then get any last thoughts you have. So from a regional standpoint, we feel like, yep, that's the data is definitely showing it. We're going to place our bet behind it. We'll see if we're right or not.
Yeah.
So lean into the builder and real estate side and make sure that if you don't already have a regional footprint, you're looking at opportunities to create it, even if it is through affiliate relationships. On the loan officer side, they're always going to ask for more. We know that. But there are opportunities there, right? Not just through AI and how, you can get the back end operations side to move more smoothly, but also I loved your idea about digging back into your pipeline and go, where are we saying no? Why are we saying no? Does that actually introduce an opportunity to look at either other loan products, programs, down payment assistance, et cetera, to really get more creative in meeting the consumer demands, because they are continuing to get more complicated. And then lastly, like we've always said, like, don't wait on rates, right? Don't make your market based on rates. Don't live and die by rates. Make your market now. Rates are always going to fluctuate. And there are always life events, to your point, right? So, and I think that's always going to be true. And they drive people to, sell homes. I personally am not happy to admit, but willing to be vulnerable and transparent and admit, that I and my ex-husband sold our house that was at 2.25% because we got divorced, and it was just the option that we had to do. And it was like the most brutal decision I think I've ever made in my life financially, to be like, I can't believe I'm walking away from this rate. But again, life events do happen. And sometimes we are pushed to have to make those decisions, even if we don't want to, and even if they're not the best investment decisions. So
yeah.
Any last thoughts on either other trends that we might see or signals you're seeing helping lenders cut through the noise?
No, I think that's most of it. I mean, I'm sitting, in New England, and the Northeast is where a lot of my knowledge is, and so there's massive inventory problems. But in a national context, I mean, I think the future in purchase isn't going to come from waiting for the rates to come down, like you said. It's going to come from structuring what your market needs, what your buyers need, what your sellers need, for that matter, so that they can become buyers, and finding distribution with partnerships. So. We all hope rates come down and affordability gets a little better, but I think those are the things to focus on.
Yeah, love that. Well, appreciate you being here today, Brock, and filling in. I'm sure Jeremy had about 5,000 other thoughts that we didn't cover, but he'll be here again.
Yeah, there's always another week.
Yeah, so he'll be back next week, and if he doesn't like the recording, we can always do 2.0, but hopefully we covered the spirit of what he wanted to, and I didn't get to see the Q&A, but hopefully the audience felt like this was all good, relevant information as you go into planning season. And thanks again for being here, and we'll see you guys all next week.
Thanks.
Thanks, Brock.